Hi everyone and welcome back. We're now at the start of Unit 4 of our course as we continue our journey through the Hellenistic period of philosophy, turning our focus now to Stoicism, a school that alongside Epicureanism shaped much of the philosophical thought of this era. In this first part of Lecture 9, we begin by situating Stoicism within the Hellenistic period, emphasizing its unique contributions and evolution as a school of thought. We'll explore how Stoicism, emerging from its origins in classical Athens, developed into a philosophy that resonated throughout the Mediterranean world until finally settling in Rome. We'll also address common misconceptions about Stoicism and see how Stoic thought is more dynamic and engaged with the complexities of life than is typically assumed. Our discussion in this video will end with a brief look at the insights of Seneca, who wrote at length on the relationship the Stoics drew between living in agreement with nature, the life of virtue, and the happy life. Over the 2 parts of this lecture, we'll gain a thorough understanding of Stoicism, uncovering the richness of its philosophical system and examining how key ideas of the school continue to be applied even today. Let's begin by revisiting Raphael's school of Athens. By this point in the course, we've covered the views of Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and Epicurus. Our focus now shifts to a less conspicuous figure in Raphael's fresco, Zeno of Citium, the founder of the Stoic school. You'll find him circled here on the left in the foreground of the painting, next to a somewhat creepy-looking baby. Why Raphael chose to depict Zeno in this way is anyone's guess. Perhaps it's meant to be a reminder that philosophical insights can come from the most unexpected sources. Or maybe it's just a Renaissance inside joke. Either way, Zeno's presence in this fresco, though modest, marks the importance of Stoicism in the history of Greek and Roman philosophical thought. We'll consider the development of the Stoic school further in a moment, but before that, let's review again this timeline and identify the school within the broader context of the Hellenistic period. As we saw in our last unit, this period in history, marked by immense cultural and intellectual expansion, saw the flourishing of philosophical schools across the Mediterranean world as the study of philosophy spread outside of Greece to Rome. Along with its rival school, Epicureanism, Stoicism emerged as a pivotal response to the changing times of this period by addressing the complexities and challenges of an increasingly interconnected world, offering insights that remain relevant to this day. When it comes to the development of Stoicism, it's important to view the school as a living, evolving philosophy, not confined to the doctrines of a single thinker. Unlike Epicureanism, named after its founder Epicurus, Stoicism derives its name from the Stoa Poikile, which was a painted porch building in Athens where its students gathered. You can see a restored version of the Stoa Poikile in Athens at the top left of this timeline. The Stoic school's ethos of collective intellectual development and debate, instead of following the vision of a single person, can thus be seen in its very name. Taking a close look at this timeline, you'll find at the very top the death of Socrates in 399 BCE. Several Stoic thinkers regarded Socrates as a significant influence on their philosophy. As I've already mentioned, Zeno of Citium is viewed as the founder of Stoicism. But on the left of this timeline, you'll see other crucial Stoic philosophers, many of whom were equally, if not more important than Zeno, to the development of Stoicism. This is worth noting because across its history as a school, Stoic ideas were continuously refined. Again, this was a dynamic philosophy rather than a fixed one. Early Greek Stoic philosophers like Zeno, Cleanthes, and Chrysippus all actively engaged with the works and ideas of their predecessors and contemporaries in Athens, many of whom you'll see listed on the right of this timeline as some of the Stoics' key influences and interlocutors. These thinkers weren't Stoics themselves, but they affected the development of the Stoics' views in significant ways. They include Diogenes of Sinope, the Cynic philosopher who inspired the Stoic emphasis on living in accordance with nature, and figures like Arcesilaus, the academic skeptic philosopher, whose challenges spurred the Stoics to strengthen their views in logic. The timeline's midpoint here, 155 BCE, marks a pivotal moment. the Greek embassy to Rome, which included the Stoic philosopher Diogenes of Babylon. This event catalyzed the spread of Stoicism throughout the Mediterranean, bridging Greek philosophical traditions with Roman cultural and political life. The way Stoicism adapted here to diverse contexts and different cultures shows us once more its evolving nature in the ancient world. Finally, at the lower end of our timeline is the date 529 CE, which marked the closure of Greek and Roman philosophical schools by the Emperor Justinian. By this time, Stoicism had firmly established its core tenets, spread largely thanks to the writings of late Roman Stoics like Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius. These figures, whom we'll be reading in this unit, were less concerned with making theoretical adjustments to Stoic doctrine and more interested in the practical application of Stoicism to daily Roman life. This timeline, then, is not just a chronology. It's a narrative of intellectual growth and response. It shows a philosophy that thrived on debate, adaptation, and refinement. Now, to get things going in our study of Stoicism, let's first address a common misconception associated with the school, a misconception embedded in our contemporary use of the word Stoic in English. Having a Stoic attitude today has come to be seen as synonymous with having a stiff upper lip, a kind of fatalism where you accept everything that happens to you in life without question and without trying to change things. Consider two quotes. The first from Reinhold Niebuhr, the 20th century theologian and author of the famous Serenity Prayer, which we'll return to later in this unit. The opening line of that prayer reads as follows: "God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change." Second, reflect on the next quote, often attributed to the contemporary philosopher and political activist Angela Davis. "I'm no longer accepting the things I cannot change, I'm changing the things I cannot accept." For many people, the Niebuhr quote sounds pretty Stoic. And in fact, this is correct. There's a real connection between this claim and the Stoics' approach to the good life. But where most of us go wrong, it's in thinking that Niebuhr and Davis are saying opposite things. What I want to show you instead is how these two claims are in logical harmony with one another and can be read as saying the same thing. So let's do a bit of logic together, an area of philosophy in which the Stoics were pioneers in the ancient world. We're going to focus here particularly on the logic of conditional statement. A conditional statement, often structured as an if-then statement, is a staple in logic. You can see such statements in mathematics, in studying the empirical world, and even in pop culture. Take as an example the empirical truth of the conditional statement, "If it's raining, then there are clouds." Logicians break this statement down into an antecedent clause, "If it's raining," and a consequent clause, "Then there are clouds." Logicians will also then formalize such statements as if P, then Q, where P can refer to any antecedent, like it's a triangle, and Q can refer to any consequent, like it has three sides. Now, a crucial feature of the way conditional statements work involves a fundamental concept in logic known as the contrapositive. Let's break this down slowly. We have here our basic conditional statement. If it's raining, then there are clouds, formalized as if P, then Q. The contrapositive of this statement switches both parts around and then negates each of them. It now becomes if not Q, then not P. This idea can seem a bit abstract at first, but you can see its significance by looking at how it works in our rain statement. Again, the statement is if it's raining, then there are clouds. Or in formalized language, if P, then Q. The contrapositive of this is if not Q, then not P, which, when applied to the rain statement, translates to if there are no clouds, then it's not raining. Notice the crucial point here. The contrapositive is logically equivalent to the original statement. If it's true that when it's raining, then there are clouds, it must always also be true that when there are no clouds, then it's not raining. The truth of one statement guarantees the truth of the other. This logical equivalence is a powerful tool in understanding and analyzing conditional claims, because the contrapositive rule works for every single conditional claim that exists. We know, for instance, that all dogs are mammals. Since that's true, this means that by the contrapositive rule, if we come across a creature that's not a mammal, then we can also conclude that it's not a dog. Or if it's true that to have a driver's license, you must be at least 16 years old, we can also conclude the contrapositive that if your friend Anya isn't yet 16, then she doesn't have a driver's license. So let's see how all of this is relevant to our Niebuhr quote, "God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change." We can paraphrase this quote as a conditional claim. If you cannot change it, then you should accept it. Turn that into a formal statement, and you get if not P, then Q. Here, not P represents our inability to change something, and Q represents the fact that we should accept it. Now let's find the contrapositive for Niebuhr's statement. Remember, to formulate the contrapositive, we need to switch the antecedent and the consequent, and then negate each of them. So if not P, then Q becomes if not Q, then P. When we apply this contrapositive rule to Niebuhr's claim, it translates to if you should not accept it, then you can change it. And this reflects the view expressed in the Angela Davis quote. When you're faced with something you should not accept, Davis's perspective emphasizes action, or changing things, which is exactly what the contrapositive of the Niebuhr claim suggests. So, read in this way, the quotes are not saying opposite things at all. They're completely compatible, and just two different perspectives on the same basic idea. This exercise is not just a clever logical trick. It encapsulates a core Stoic principle that we'll be considering more closely in this unit. Stoicism teaches us to distinguish between what we cannot change and what we can change, urging action where possible and acceptance where not. It's a philosophy urging us to assess each situation and adapt, not an attitude of absolute fatalism. To bring all of this home, let's consider a situation that everyone has experienced at one time or another, getting a bad grade on an exam. Let's say you just got a test back in one of your classes and the grade's disappointing. What can't you change here? Well, you cannot change the grade itself. You already took the test and the grade has been recorded. You cannot change the questions you missed. You cannot change the fact that it feels disappointing right now. Those are the facts of the situation, and according to our Stoic principle, these are things you need to accept, as Niebuhr says in that line from the Serenity Prayer. But the next step here is really important, and it's where the Angela Davis side of our equation comes in. A bunch of things do not follow from getting a bad grade, things you should absolutely not accept. It does not follow that you're a bad student. That's not a fact about the world that you have to accept. That's an interpretation, a story you might tell yourself, but it's a story that hasn't finished yet, and that's something you can change. So it doesn't follow that you'll fail the class. You can change that. It doesn't follow that you're not smart enough for the material. You can put in more effort and change that. It doesn't follow that you should give up. You can definitely change that. Do you see how this works? When misfortune strikes, the Stoic move is to ask two questions. First, what exactly are the unchangeable facts here that you need to accept? And second, what interpretations, what stories, what conclusions are you drawing that you should not accept because those are things you can change? Niebuhr is focusing on that first question, the things we cannot change that we should accept. The grade is what it is. You cannot change it, so you should accept it. Davis is doing something different but complementary in putting Stoicism into practice. She's saying she's done focusing on the things that she cannot change. Now she's focusing on the second question, the things we should not accept because we can change them. The meaning of that grade, what it says about your future, what you do next. All of that is something you can control that's up to you. So as we study Stoic philosophy further, keep in mind this complex interplay between acceptance and action, between what you cannot change and what you can, a cornerstone of Stoic thought. After this preview to the Stoics' philosophy, let's now shift our gaze to their overall vision of the good life. Seneca, one of the great Roman Stoic philosophers, offers a concise summary of some central Stoic ideas in his essay on the happy life. Let's consider two passages from this work. As is agreed among all Stoics, Seneca claims, nature is the guide I choose. Wisdom lies in not wandering from her path and in molding oneself in accordance with her law and example. Here, Seneca underscores the Stoic commitment to living in harmony with nature, aligning our actions with its rational principles. The second passage elaborates further. It will then be the same thing if I say the highest good is a mind that despises the operations of chance, rejoicing in virtue, or the power of the mind resides in being unconquerable, experienced in life, calm in action, and possessed of much kindness and concern for those with whom it has dealings. This passage encapsulates the Stoic ideal of a robust, virtuous mind, resilient against fortune and compassionate in its dealings with others. But how are these different elements, nature, wisdom, mind, virtue, and our relations with others, interconnected in the Stoic worldview? How does Stoic philosophy weave these aspects together to form a coherent approach to the good life? In the next part of this lecture, we'll examine this question further in seeking a more thorough understanding of Stoic thought, revealing the threads that bind each of these key terms into a unified philosophical system. So that's the end for now of our introduction to Stoicism. We began this video by situating Stoicism within the vast and varied landscape of the Hellenistic period, tracing its roots from classical Athens to the Roman world. We then discussed the development of the Stoic school, observing its dynamic and evolving nature. Far from being a rigid doctrine, Stoicism was a philosophy that thrived on intellectual growth and revision. In addressing a misconception of Stoicism, we explored the school's approach to acceptance and action. Through a careful logical analysis, we saw how Stoic philosophy can be read as promoting a balanced interplay between accepting what we cannot change and changing what we can. And finally, we considered the thoughts of Seneca on the Stoics' approach to the good life, examining how themes of nature, wisdom, the mind, virtue, and interpersonal relations are intricately woven together in Stoic thought. Keep in mind these aspects of Stoicism as we move on to the second part of Lecture 9. In the next video, we'll see how they're integral to understanding the Stoic system and the guidance it offers in living a good life.